I think things are starting to come unglued even more quickly than I had anticipated. I think there's a possibility that they may bring down a number of these countries' sovereign debt prior to the election, and it may include the United States. And if they do that, there may not be an election. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, and I don't want to give these people any ideas, but that would be the perfect thing to do to get control. And so that's possible. Whether it's probable, I don't know at this point. But there are a number of countries that are on the edge. We've got Ireland, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and Greece, which we know about. And then nobody ever hears about Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Romania, Hungary, Poland.
And that will send debt shockwaves a lot bigger than the housing bubble throughout the planet. Meanwhile, the Chinese are already moving and dumping their U.S. T-bills.
That's correct. And even Denmark's having problems. Of course, the two worst, really, for their size, is Great Britain and the United States. Now, I think what government wanted to do, or those behind government wanted to do, is after the election, start these things going by taking all of these countries to the edge, and then having a meeting like they did with Smithsonian and the Plaza Accord and the Louvre Accord, and devalue currencies, and have a debt default between nations, and everybody falls off a cliff together, and we have everybody devaluing their currencies, or most everybody, and then we go into a deflationary depression, which they want to, from behind the scenes, people like Goldman and Morgan and Citigroup and all of those people, and the Bilderbergers and all those groups, they would then try to suppress the people of the world, quote, legally, while they were on their knees financially and economically.
Let's expand on that. We now see open discussions of devaluation of the dollar, and we also, as you talked about last week, they're talking about coming in and taking people's pension funds, the government taking over people's pension funds, and then paying you part of it back. The neocons are pushing for new taxes as if that's a good thing.
No, I don't think taxes are the answer. The real answer is to cut government spending all over the country, not just in Washington. I mean, let's cut it by 50%. So you got to lay off 30% of your employees. So that's too bad. This is really the solution: purging all of those banks and insurance companies and brokerage firms and transnational conglomerates.
And let's explain that, though. All the studies show one government job costs two private sectors. So you get rid of the government jobs, a lot of them. Then you get two jobs back for every job you get rid of there, and people have their own tax money. That would fix it.
It's going to happen sooner or later, and they know it. They want it on their terms so they can control it, so they can make people do what they want to do under those circumstances. And that's why all the things that you talk about in regard to what's going on in America about Homeland Security and you can't put bars in your windows and all of these things, that is because they know the public is going to be very, very disturbed about all this, and who knows what they'll do.
Stay there. Bob Chapman, our guest, straight ahead, joining us. Mike Rivero.
Behind blue eyes.
We had James Traficant on for the entire second hour of the show today. That'll be on the free podcast, served up at the end of the show. It'll be reposted in higher quality at prisonplanet.tv for members. A huge interview. A news-making interview. What incredible courage he's got. That's why we're standing beside him and behind him here. So that is coming up in an hour and 27 minutes when the official live radio broadcast ends. Of course, I'll also be back live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Don't forget the free iTunes application. It's got 5 stars, hundreds and hundreds of ratings at iTunes since we launched it a week ago. What is it, like 10,000 plus downloads of it? Needs to be a lot more than that. It's absolutely free. Tell your friends and family that have iPhones or Apple about it. It's a great system. It streams a lot better than some of the other free systems that have our show where it's in larger listings. We do have other things like Flycast that have the show. We have links to where you can find us there. That's all at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Now, we're going to go back into the economy here in about 10 minutes, but Mike Rivero has been kind enough to join us because, again, this building got hit at about 9:55 Central. I learned about it about 10:30 when I got into work, and we've been all over the map. Before they said Tea Party, before they tried to blame it, I said it's a government building. Watch them try to blame it on the Tea Party. I was right about that. Then we have a source that said the FBI was dispatched into Austin about a threat to a government building. They don't know specifically because it was another department. They just saw it and then saw them leave. Could that be something else? Who knows? But we know we played the KXAN piece where the woman said, I saw the emergency vehicles out here beforehand. I talked to multiple listeners who called in, and we've talked to some of them off air as well. And I mean, masses of calls here to the office in the comment line that, yeah, there were emergency people out there before, and we heard the boom. Some saw them before, others heard the boom, and then went out and saw the police out there with cameras already within seconds. Did they know a threat was coming? They weren't sure. Were they on alert? They were having terror drills the day before with FEMA and Homeland Security in the city of Austin. In fact, bring me that city of Austin document. I forgot and left it in there. So we don't know what's going on. But Bob Chapman seems to think this was just if somebody fed up. Traficant's leaning towards that. And I wasn't leaning really towards that. I wasn't sure. We were looking at everything until I began to notice, and I noticed in Rivero also, because he's worked with the media, he recognized this, that real terror attacks or real attacks against government, they tend to ignore. This was so big they couldn't ignore it, but that suddenly it kind of left the news cycle today. It was gone. With the underwear bomber we know was staged, it never left the news cycle, and they had something they were pushing. Like they're staging fake cyber attacks right now to get through the Senate. No doubt that's fake and staged. So I wanted to get Mike Rivero's take on what he thinks going on here, and then pop back in with Bob Chapman, who's with us as well right now. Mike Rivero joining us via video Skype from Hawaii. Good to have you here with us.
Thanks an awful lot for having me on your show, Alex.
Okay, give us your bottom line on, with all the evidence this early on, we're not sure, but what you think's going on.
Well, I'm definitely leaning toward thinking this was a genuine, spontaneous action by this gentleman who he's just an ordinary working American, and he got pushed to his limit, and he snapped, and we all have a breaking point. And I think the media was attempting to spin this to make him look like a demon and a bad guy, and then when that really wasn't working, my concern was that the media was going to try and pull away the focus as quickly as possible, which, as you point out, they're doing today. It's all Tiger Woods all the time. And I think what's in there is we need to understand that from the point of view of the government and the media, their big priority right now, they don't want people actually reading this guy's suicide note. They're calling it a manifesto to make it sound like it's a bad thing because the commies had a manifesto and the Unabomber had a manifesto. So this is a manifesto and you shouldn't go read it. But everybody who's actually read this suicide note, nobody condones what Joe Stack did. But everybody seems to say, I understand why he did it. We are all at that breaking point. We're seeing the work of a lifetime being taken away from us, under threat of force, spent on wars, spent on corruption, spent on Israel.
And much of Congress and Geithner and the White House don't even pay taxes.
That's exactly right, and that's further annoying a lot of people. And we've got callers into our show from people who've been thrown out of their homes by the IRS. The woman called into the show. Her veteran husband had been neglected by the VA for 9 months, came down with cancer. The week he died, the IRS took her bank accounts. It's just a horrific story out there, and everybody understands what this guy was feeling. They don't agree with what he did, but they understand where
That's right. It was bad enough. It was bad enough with the IRS outside the law, no due process, robbing everybody before for the private Federal Reserve. But now everybody's starting to go bankrupt or on the edge of bankrupt, and they don't even have money for gas or food. And now the government's taken the house. The only thing they've got or their little bank account with $500 in it. Here's Rasmussen last week. 75% of Americans are angry at government current policies. And that's a low number. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you're right. Most people are still trying to be polite and say, yes, I'm a loyal American. And there was a survey they did about, is it okay to cheat on your taxes? And I expect probably most people lied on that one as well because they're afraid of, they're afraid of the IRS. The IRS is the instrument of terror in our society. And again, nobody's condoning what Joe Stack did, but everybody who has written into my show or called into my show, they understand why he did it. I have not heard a single word of sympathy from anybody regarding the IRS in this affair.
Talking to you this morning on the phone, you were saying the government's scared.
Yes, absolutely. Because if there's one thing that Joe Stack has accomplished, it's kind of in a positive sense, it has made the abuses of the IRS acceptable in polite conversation. People are now willing to talk about how many of them are in serious trouble with the IRS. You've seen the flood of TV commercials for all these tax resolution services. That alone tells you that most of Americans are in some kind of tax trouble.